So, imagine you're standing in front of this, like, massive, incredibly complex machine. Lights are flashing everywhere, gears are grinding, dials are spinning.
Right, total chaos.
Exactly. To most people, it just looks like overwhelming noise.
Mm.
But to the engineer who actually built it, it's entirely predictable. You push this specific button, and that specific lever moves.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
Yeah, so today, our mission is to become the engineer of a machine that, frankly, overwhelms thousands of families every year. I mean, we're doing a deep dive into the grade 12 CPS Business Studies curriculum.
Yeah, and whether you are a student staring down like a literal mountain of textbooks or a parent trying to figure out how to actually support your matriculant, this deep dive is going to give you the ultimate blueprint.
We've got the source material, the textbooks, the examiner guidelines. We are laying it all out because it is a really dense subject.
Oh, it's incredibly dense. There's just no getting around the sheer volume of information you have to absorb. But viewing it as a predictable machine is exactly the right mindset.
Because the curriculum dictates literally everything.
Exactly. It dictates what gets tested, when it gets tested, and most importantly, exactly how the examiners are going to ask the questions. If you know the internal logic of the syllabus, I mean, you can predict the entire game.
Okay, so let's break down that internal logic term by term. We want to highlight exactly what the examiners love to ask and, reveal those strategies for both paper 1 and paper 2.
Sounds good. Let's start with term 1.
Yeah. Looking at the syllabus for term 1, it kind of feels like we're just laying down the law. Like, literally.
That's because you are. You begin the academic year by establishing the legal and strategic boundaries that every single business in South Africa has to follow.
Right.
So this term covers business environments and business operations. And the headiest part, teachers often call it the low-hanging fruit, is the macro environment, specifically legislation.
Wait. Calling it low-hanging fruit feels like a massive stretch when I look at this list. I mean, we're talking about the Skills Development Act, Labor Relations Act, Employment Equity Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act.
Just a lot, yeah.
And COITA, BBBEE, the National Credit Act, and the Consumer Protection Act. That is like a massive alphabet soup for a high schooler to memorize.
It looks completely intimidating on the page, I'll give you that. But you have to remember, the examiners aren't asking for law degrees here.
Okay, so what are they actually asking for?
For every single one of those 8 acts, students really only need to memorize a specific 4-part framework. That's purpose, impact, compliance, and penalties.
Okay, break that framework down for me. Like, how does a student actually apply that to one of these laws?
Well, let's take the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, right?
Okay.
The BCEA. The student needs to know the purpose, which is to ensure fair labor practices and prevent exploitation.
Got it. And then the impact.
Right, the impact. Like, what are the advantages and disadvantages for a business? So an advantage would be a happier workforce. A disadvantage is, the high administrative cost of tracking all those working hours.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And compliance.
Compliance is just how a business practically obeys the law, like by giving workers their statutory annual leave. And then finally, penalties. What happens if the business just ignores it?
I assume they get fined.
Exactly, fined by the labor inspector. So if a student can just fill in that 4x8 mental grid for all the acts, they basically sweep up the marks.
Oh, wow. Okay, that structural approach makes it so much more manageable than, like, just reading a textbook cover to cover.
Definitely. But businesses don't just exist to follow laws, right? So term 1 also gets into business strategy.
Right, because businesses need actual tools to survive.
Yeah, students learn these industrial analysis tools to figure out how a business should react to its environment. They have to master the SWOT analysis, internal strengths and weaknesses, external opportunities and threats. But they also use tools like PESTLE.
PESTLE being the acronym for Political, Economic, Social, Technological, Legal, and Environmental Factors, right?
Spot on. So the exam will present a scenario, and the student has to use PESTLE to identify the threat. Like, if the scenario says a new sugar tax was introduced, the student has to identify that as an economic or legal threat.
And then what? Do they just say the business needs to deal with it?
No, and that's where students lose marks. They have to recommend a highly specific strategy to counter it. They can't just say, the business should work harder.
Right, that's too vague.
Exactly. They need to recommend formal strategies like forward integration, intensive strategies, diversification, or, defensive strategies like retrenching staff.
Okay, and then the final piece of term 1 is human resources, right? walking through the whole employee life cycle from recruitment to induction.
Yes, and showing how the HR manager complies with all those acts we just talked about during daily operations.
So with all these different laws and strategies, there have to be places where students just naturally get their wires crossed in the exam room. What is like the most common mix-up?
Oh, there are two major traps in Term 1. First, students constantly confuse consumer rights under the Consumer Protection Act, the CPA, with the National Credit Act, the NCA.
I mean, they do sound really similar.
They do, but the CPA protects you from, say, buying a faulty toaster. The NCA protects you from predatory lending when you try to buy a car on credit. Mixing those up loses marks instantly.
Oh, I see. What's the second trap?
The difference between BE, Black Economic Empowerment, and BBBE, which is broad-based Black Economic Empowerment.
Right.
Examiners test this constantly. Students absolutely must know the 5 pillars of BBBE: management control, ownership, skills development, enterprise and supplier development, and socioeconomic development. A business gets a compliance rating based on those 5 specific areas.
So how early in the year are students tested on all this? 'Cause this timeline seems pretty aggressive.
It is aggressive. In late February to early March, they face a 50-mark case study focusing heavily on legislation and strategies.
Wow, already.
Yeah. And then by mid to late March, there's a 100-mark controlled test covering literally everything from Term 1. And honestly, the most crucial tip for passing these is a technique called scenario extraction.
Okay, wait. How does scenario extraction work?
So, if an exam question asks a student to, quote, identify the business strategy from the scenario, the student only gets the marks if they name the strategy and then quote the exact sentence verbatim from the provided text.
Wait, I have to push back on this rule. Why are examiners so pedantic about verbatim quoting?
I know, it sounds rigid.
Like, if the student understands the concept and just paraphrases it in their own words, shouldn't that demonstrate a better understanding? Why force them to act like a photocopier?
It totally feels pedantic, I agree. But the examiner is actually testing evidence-based analysis. They need to know that you didn't just guess forward integration because it sounded like a smart business term.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, they need you to prove exactly which symptom in the text led to your diagnosis. Quoting verbatim proves you found the specific evidence. If you paraphrase, the examiner just doesn't know if you actually extracted the clue from the text or if you're just writing down some generic theory you memorized.
Oh, that makes sense. It's like a doctor pointing to the exact broken bone on the x-ray rather than just saying, hey, the leg hurts.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to look at it.
Okay, so Term 1 establishes those legal boundaries. We know what the government allows us to do, how to analyze the environment. But boundaries don't produce goods and they don't make a profit.
No, they don't.
You need actual human beings inside the building doing the work. And that introduces a whole new set of risks. So how does the curriculum handle the inside of the house?
Well, this is where we shift into Term 2, which focuses really heavily on Paper 2 topics, business ventures, and business rules. We move from the external environment to internal problem solving.
Yep.
And that starts with managing those human beings. Distinguishing between management and leadership is critical here. Are you managing a task, or are you leading a person?
Right, and I assume matching the right leadership style to the right situation is key.
Exactly. Students have to understand styles like autocratic, democratic, laissez-faire, charismatic, and transactional. Examiners want to see you match the style to a specific crisis.
Give me an example of that.
Well, if a factory is on fire, you don't use democratic leadership and, like, hold a vote on which exit to use.
Right, obviously.
You use autocratic, you take command. But if you're managing a team of graphic designers working on a new ad campaign, autocratic leadership totally stifles creativity. So you'd pivot to laissez-faire or democratic.
Okay, yeah, that makes intuitive sense.
Yeah.
But looking ahead in the Term 2 syllabus, I see this massive section on investments and insurance.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
There is a surprising amount of heavy math here for what is essentially a theory-based subject. I thought this was a theory class.
This section throws a major curveball at so many students. They have to understand different investment vehicles. For example, comparing the Johannesburg Stock Exchange with RSA retail savings bonds. Like, why would a business choose one over the other?
I'd imagine risk plays a huge factor there.
Risk is exactly the factor. The JSE offers high returns but carries high risk because share prices fluctuate. RSA retail savings bonds, on the other hand, are backed by the government.
So the capital and interest are guaranteed.
Exactly. They also need to know the difference between ordinary shares, which give investors voting rights but variable dividends, and preference shares, which offer fixed dividends but strip away those voting rights.
Got it. And the insurance side looks just as detailed, like principles such as utmost good faith, where you basically can't lie on your application about having a thatched roof.
Right, you have to disclose everything.
And insurable interest, meaning you can only insure something if you would personally suffer a financial loss if it were destroyed. Like, you can't just insure your competitor's warehouse and hope it burns down.
As fun as that sounds, no, you can't. And the insurance section is actually where the math comes in, specifically the average clause calculation. It is the most frequently asked calculation in paper 2.
Wait, why are we calculating underinsurance payouts in a business studies class?
Because of the principle of indemnification. Insurance is designed to put you back in the exact financial position you were in before a disaster. You cannot use insurance to make a profit.
Okay.
So if a business owner insures a 2 million rand building for only 1 million rand just to save on their monthly premiums, they are underinsured. If a fire burns down half that building, causing 1 million rand in damage, the insurance company isn't just going to hand over 1 million rand.
Oh, wow. So they penalize you.
They do. They penalize the business using the average clause formula.
So the student basically has to act as the insurance adjuster and calculate the penalty during the exam.
Yes. The student must show the formula. Payout equals insured amount divided by market value multiplied by the loss. If they don't show that exact formula in their working, they lose the marks.
Man, that's brutal. Okay, so Term 2 handles leadership, investments, and insurance. What else is happening inside the business?
Ethics and problem solving. Students have to address highly practical workplace issues. I'm talking tax evasion, sexual harassment, unauthorized use of funds, and they learn structured problem-solving techniques to deal with them.
Are there any traps there?
Yes. The big examiner trap here is distinguishing between the Delphi technique and the nominal group technique, or NGT.
Okay, how do you keep those two straight?
Well, Delphi involves outside experts who remain anonymous and communicate via questionnaires. You use it when you need specialized knowledge without, personalities clashing in a room.
And NGT?
NGT involves your internal employees sitting in a room together, brainstorming, and then voting silently on ideas. So it's outside anonymous experts versus inside silent employees.
Okay, that's a great way to remember it. And wrapping up Term 2 is quality performance, right?
Yes, understanding TQM, or total quality management. Students have to know its 5 elements. That's continuous improvement, total client satisfaction, continuous skills development, adequate financing and capacity, and strict monitoring and evaluation.
That sounds like a lot to juggle.
It is.
Yeah.
They also have to know the difference between quality control, which is inspecting the final product before it ships, and quality assurance, which is checking quality during the actual manufacturing process.
Wow, the pressure really ramps up here. I mean, in May, students do a 50-mark presentation SBA. Then from late May to mid-June, they face these massive 300-mark mid-year examinations.
It's exhausting. 2 150-mark papers that basically mimic the final year-end exams, covering all of Term 1 and Term 2.
Which brings us to Term 3. Internal operations are running smoothly, the rules are set. Now the business has to look outward.
Exactly. What is its impact on society? Term 3 is actually the shortest teaching term of the year. It's just a 5 to 6 week sprint of new content.
So this is corporate citizenship, looking at human rights, diversity, inclusivity, environmental issues, like how a business handles race, gender, poverty, and even its carbon footprint.
Yeah, there is a massive focus here on social responsibility. Students absolutely must clearly define and differentiate between corporate social responsibility, CSR, and corporate social investment, CSI.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to see if I've got this distinction right.
Right.
Is CSR kind of like making a New Year's resolution to get healthy, while CSI is actually going out, buying the gym membership, and lifting the weights?
Yes. And to stretch that analogy even further, the examiner is going to ask to see your gym receipts.
Ah.
Nice.
Seriously, CSR is the big umbrella. It's the intention, the overarching strategy to improve society. CSI represents the actual physical resources, the money, the time the business spends to execute that strategy. If a student confuses the intention with the receipt, they lose the marks.
I imagine examiners severely punish vague answers in this section.
Oh, heavily. If a scenario says a business employs people from different backgrounds, a student can't just write. They are doing diversity.
Right.
They have to identify the specific issue like gender and state, exactly how the business promotes it, like implementing equal pay for work of equal value.
Got it. And term 3 also loops back to business ventures, right? Specifically, presentations and forms of ownership.
Yeah, they learn how to handle professional feedback, like dealing with an angry audience member without getting defensive.
Good life skill.
Yeah.
But regarding forms of ownership, didn't they learn about sole traders and companies back in grade 10?
They did, yeah. But in grade 12, it's not just about defining them anymore. It's about evaluating them for a success or failure based on very specific criteria.
Oh, like what?
Like, how does taxation impact a sole trader versus a company? How does the management structure differ? But honestly, the biggest examiner trap here is the criteria of capacity.
Wait, doesn't capacity mean like how much the business can produce?
That is exactly what students think, and it costs thousands of them marks every single year.
Oh no, so what does it mean?
In the context of forms of ownership, capacity means the legal capacity to enter into contracts. A company is an independent legal entity, so it has legal capacity. A sole trader does not, for the individual owner carries the capacity.
Wow, okay. And with only 5 weeks to cover all this, the assessments must be totally rapid fire.
Completely. There's a 50-mark project in July or August, and that leads directly into the preliminary exams, the trials.
Right.
These are 2 150-mark papers testing the entire year's curriculum from day one. It is the ultimate dress rehearsal.
Okay, so the dress rehearsal is over. We've finally reached term 4, the final stretch.
Yeah.
And looking at the blueprint for term 4, the most shocking thing to me is that there's absolutely no new content.
Zero.
None.
Wait, really?
None.
According to the CIPS document, by the end of term 3, the teaching is completely done. Term 4 is entirely about revision strategy and mastering the psychology of the exam paper. You essentially shift from learning the theory to learning how to play the examiner.
And I guess the first step in playing the examiner is mastering those action verbs in the prompts. Because students might know the theory perfectly, but if they misinterpret the verb, they lose the mark.
Exactly. Like, if a question says identify, you literally just state the fact. Done. But if it says discuss or explain, you state the fact and give a brief description.
What about evaluate?
Evaluate means you must give the pros A and D the cons. If you only list the advantages, you lose half the marks immediately. Justify means giving reasons why a strategy is the best choice, and recommend means suggesting practical, actionable steps.
Okay. But the real boss-level challenge of term 4 has to be section C of the exams, that 40-mark essay. You have to write this for both final papers, and you basically have about 30 minutes to do it.
Yeah, and examiners grade this using a very strict rubric known by the acronym LASO. LASO.
Okay, break down LASO for us.
Well, L is for layout. The structure is non-negotiable here. You must start with the exact word introduction as a heading.
Really? That's specific.
Yes. You must use subheadings taken directly from the prompt, and you must end with the exact word conclusion. If you write, like, body as a heading, you lose marks.
Wow. Okay, what's the A?
A is for analysis. Under each subheading, you need to provide enough correct facts to earn 16 marks per main heading.
And the S?
S is synthesis. Now, this is a relevance check, and honestly, it's where smart students often trip up.
Really? Why?
Because you must only answer what is asked. If the prompt asks about the impact of the Consumer Protection Act, and a student decides to show off by also writing down all the penalties of the act, which, are correct facts but weren't asked for, they lose synthesis marks.
Wait, so if you over-answer, you get penalized?
Yes, you lose the synthesis mark.
Hearing all this, term 4 sounds less like a business class and more like you're training a witness for a legal deposition.
That's a great way to put it.
You are on the stand. Answer the question, prove your answer, and stop talking. Offering unprompted information gets you penalized.
That is the exact mindset students need. And finally, the last letter in LASO is O for originality. You have to include at least 2 real-world business examples related to the topic.
And I heard they can't be older than 2 years.
That's correct.
On the 2-year rule.
Because business is a dynamic, living subject. The examiner doesn't want to read about Henry Ford's assembly line from 100 years ago. They want to know that the student watches the news, understands current interest rates, and knows how, load shedding or global supply chain issues are affecting actual companies today.
Okay, so term 4 is all about splitting the final exams into a mental cheat sheet. Paper 1 is environments and operations. Paper 2 is ventures and roles. You map the topics, practice timed essays, and do a post-mortem on those prelim exams to fix weak spots before the final NSC exams in late October.
You've got it.
Let's take a step back and look at the whole machine now. We started in term 1, memorizing the rule book and the legal environments. Term 2 took us inside the business, dealing with leadership, underinsurance math, and problem solving. Then Term 3 pushed us outward, sprinting through corporate social responsibility and community impact. And finally, Term 4 was the legal deposition, mastering the exact format and psychology needed to execute on exam day.
When you look at the blueprint laid out like that, it's clearly a sequence. It is completely manageable if you just know where the examiner is going to look.
Absolutely.
And, I want to leave our listeners, especially the students who are gearing up for this, with one final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
Throughout this entire year, you learn to apply incredibly powerful tools to fictional businesses. You learn how to run a SWOT analysis to identify internal strengths and weaknesses, external opportunities, and threats.
Right.
But what if you treated your own study strategy as a business? When you get your prelim results back, sit down and apply a SWOT analysis to yourself.
Oh, wow. I love that.
Right. What are your personal internal strengths and weaknesses in Paper 1? What external opportunities and threats are facing your study schedule for Paper 2? Taking the business tools you've spent a year learning and using them to manage the business of passing Matrics. That is the ultimate synthesis of this subject.
Because at the end of the day, that massive, complicated machine we talked about at the beginning doesn't have to overwhelm you. Once you have the blueprint, you aren't just reacting to the machine anymore. Yeah. You are the engineer operating it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining us on today's deep dive. Take these strategies, apply them to your study sessions, and go ace those exams.